wrong with Mike?
What's wrong is we're going to need to switch to electric power really quick or we're all going to die. And we're going to need a lot of copper and nickel to do it. Where are we going to find that? Turns out it's in the change you get back in your hand when you make a transaction in cash.
Cash? Who uses cash anymore?
This'll take about 29 minutes. Well, hi everybody. Hi, Mike here. I have what I think is a good idea. Unless you are a short-term thinker, then you're going to think my idea sucks. And then I, in turn, will think that your thinking sucks. And we all do it. We all think short-term. That's the worst thing about human nature, short-term thinking. Don't even get me started. I'm not even going to go into politics and how politicians generally want to do the next thing to getting elected. I've worked with people who will literally step on your genitals to gain a foothold to the point where they can then step on the top of your cranium, push down to get to the next tiny achievement. I'll tell you, I've been guilty of short-term thinking. I have to go way back to when I was like 12 years old. When I was 12, there was a time, I think it was 12 years old, there was a time when I was guilty of thinking only in the near future. And, I guess I was in a period when I was raging with the hormones of puberty and the continued compulsive need to make everything silly. But we'd go on these trips to the mall. The neighbor mom and my mom would change off and take a bunch of boys to the mall. Now, I have to tell you about the area where I lived. I lived in a very rural area. And the family across the road from me, 2 boys. My family, me and my 2 brothers, my 2 younger brothers who are twins. There's 3 boys. Kid down the road, about 0.2 of a mile, boy. People up the road, mostly boys. Only to get about 0.3 of a mile down the road were there girls. There were 2 girls, very pretty, very well protected. I mean, you could barely get to any place on their property where you could see their bedroom window at nighttime. That's how protected. So we're generally a bunch of boys who were going through or about to go through puberty, and these mall trips were simply amazing. And I'm sure with all these boys that my mom and the neighboring family's mom would need a break. And they drop us off at the mall, and we hit all the spots. Go look and see if we could look at or talk to girls. Go to the arcade. And by the way, young people, malls were indoors back then. And it was amazing. We would have to do some pranks. And I think it's because I was the oldest of this pack of boys, I would mastermind the pranks. And my brothers and the family, the younger boys across the street, they just kind of go along with it. But we would prank some of the stores in the mall. Oh man, that was fun. We'd always carve out time for Montgomery Ward. Montgomery Ward was this 2-story department store. And so what we would do is we'd do the cassette tape trick. What we would do is we would prepare a cassette tape with about 3 minutes of silence. And then after the 3 minutes, we just scream a bunch of shit into it, like this store sucks and Montgomery Ward sells crap, and just ridiculous things like that. And we would forfeit a whole cassette tape, just to get this thing done. Those things weren't cheap back then, especially if they were Maxell or TDK. We'd pop the cassette tape in, crank up the volume. I'd even turn the Dolby on. Run away where we were near the exit just to hear our yelling and screaming, only to have some associate struggle to find out which particular tape player was connected to which receiver, to which speakers, to figure out which one to turn down. It was beautiful. We'd throw Alka-Seltzer into the fish aquariums. Now that I'm a chemist, I know Alka-Seltzer is basically just citric acid with sodium bicarbonate, and the bubbling's basically all theater. But it was glorious to throw them in the fish aquarium. And now that I know what I know that probably I was helping the pH of the tank, if anything. And the volume wasn't enough to kill any fish, but we were kind of not caring about that. We just wanted to see some Alka-Seltzer tablets bubbling in the fish aquarium. By the way, there was no cameras back then. If there were cameras, it was usually manned by a person who could rotate them, and I know this because I worked in retail, which is one of the reasons why these pranks on the department stores make me feel like karma caught up with me. Because I later would end up turning 16 years old and working a solid 3 or 4 years in that very mall and dealing with kids like me all the time. So anyhow, the other prank we would do, and this one I highly regret, is we would go get in the elevator on the ground floor. There was only 2 floors. So we would go and push the button for the second floor, and right before the doors close, we'd have a handful of pennies, and we'd fling them out there, and they'd roll on the floor and make a whole bunch of racket, and we'd be long gone up to the second floor, spy movie-like kind of thing. As soon as the second floor elevator came open, we'd scurry out, giggle, and then leave the store. So I regret these things because working retail karma would eventually catch up with me, and I'd realize what a pain in the ass kid I was. But also, I want all those pennies back. Because my good idea that's actually long-term is that I should have hung on to every single damn pre-1982 penny I ever came across. And I'm going to try to crank some numbers out for you, and it's going to be boring, but I'll try to make it not a big part of this discussion. I don't want to suck all the fun out of it. And you'd be like, there's fun in this? But nonetheless, I also need to talk about Montgomery Ward, the catalog, before we move on to something else. Montgomery Ward had the best catalog. Now, if you were a young boy in that day and age, you know what I'm talking about. I had this discussion with my brother the other day, and I asked him, I said, who do you think had the sexiest women's underwear section of all the catalogs? He said J.C. Penney. I gotta say he's probably correct on that. But overall, the Montgomery Ward's catalog was the best asset to have in your possession. Here's why. You could look at the ladies' underwear anytime you wanted to. If you just had your thumb in a section you could open up to, your mom could come by and say, what are you looking at, honey? What are you looking at in the catalog? And you could quick flip the page and be like, yeah, I think I'm gonna buy a 2-speaker boombox to replace my boombox that only has 1 speaker. Oh, that's nice, honey. And she'd walk away and you'd flip it right back to that ladies' underwear section. Sure, the models might not have been as good as J.C. Penney, but it was stealth, man. And I noticed that we would open up that catalog. It would open right to that section with the ladies' underwear. Because there'd be like a crease that would develop in the binding. And you'd have to quick flip to the toy section or something like that. So yeah, Montgomery Ward, best catalog ever. Okay, so here's the deal. Pre-1982 pennies were made of 95% copper. Why did they switch away from that? the copper became too expensive and the face value of the coin fell behind the actual commodity contained in the coin. Copper is pretty damn important for our future, in my opinion. And so that's the thing that I probably should have done. What I'm doing now, playing catch up, is when I get cash back for a purchase, and I use cash quite a bit, actually. If I try to patronize a small establishment, if I use my card, they're either going to pass that transaction fee on to me or they're going to eat it. If I pay with cash, nothing. If I go to the liquor store, I have to pay extra to use my credit card for that very reason. So I pay with cash, and when I get back a nickel, get to that later, or a pre-1982 penny, I get a little chub, I gotta admit. I get as much chub now as if I was a kid looking in that Montgomery Ward's catalog. And I save it away, and I put it in a jar, and then those go into rollers. But here's the thing. Once the U.S. Mint changed the composition of the penny to go from 95% copper to a zinc disc plated with copper, which is only 2.5% copper, the amount of copper in there obviously drastically changed. And legally, you can now sell those coins over face value. Now, do this with me so we don't have to crank the numbers out. Go to eBay and search for pre-1982 pennies, and then do your little sort thing on your phone or device, and then go to completed items or sold items, and you will find that pre-1982 pennies are being bought for significantly over the face value. Why am I saying this? Because young people, if you work for tips and you get a bunch of pennies, you're probably annoyed by them and you want to go to the coin star. Oh, do you feel like a star when you go to the coin star? And I've been guilty of that. As those numbers keep racking up, I'm like, I am a coin star. $25.14. Of course, they took 11% out, but free money, right? If you turn them into the bank, you wouldn't be paying the 11%. Yeah, that would be a short-term way to deal with it, and you better than the Coinstar. But if you held on and sorted them out, I know it's a pain in the ass. Everything below 1982, and actually if it's on 1982, you even got to go weigh it because they switched mid-year to when a penny was 95% copper and weighed 3.1 grams to when they were plated with copper and 2.5% copper and only 2.5 grams. You'd have to put it on a little balance and find out if it was 3.1 or 2.5 grams. And you're saying, what a pain in the tits. And you're right. But if you hang on to them, do you see any need for copper that's going to diminish in the future? Aren't we supposed to be electrifying the universe by 2035 or something? All our vehicles are going to be electric. We're supposed to put up whirligigs everywhere that generate electric. How are we going to wire those things? How does the electricity come into your house? What carries it? Copper? Yeah. Where's all this copper going to come from? How much more copper is there in an electric vehicle than a gas-powered vehicle? That's a homework assignment for you. So my kids are going to curse me, but they're going to get every single pre-1982 penny I come across until I die. And it's not easy because about 13% of all pennies in circulation are pre-1982, and I think that number is optimistic. So that's a thing. Sorry, I'll do the numbers for you if you want. Here's the numbers. You can fact check me all you want because I welcome that scrutiny. Because numbers don't lie unless you twist the numbers, and I'm not doing that. If anything, these numbers are more pessimistic than they should be because I did my notes for this yesterday when copper was trading at $4.35 a pound. Today, it's up significantly, couple percent. I don't know, but let's use yesterday's number. 3.1 grams, 95% of that's 2.95 grams, or 0.0065 pounds. If you multiply that by $4.34 a pound, the amount of copper in a pre-1982 penny is about 2.8 cents. Almost 3 times its face value. That's why they're selling on eBay above face value. Somebody out there is hoarding them. And by the way, some of these transactions don't make sense. Like if you only buy one roll, someone paid $7 for that. If you include shipping, I'm not going to buy one roll of 50 pennies for $7. If I did buy them, I'd buy them in bulk, or I'd go to the bank and I'd ask for a roll of pennies for face value, and then I'd sort them out. I'm not at that point yet. I'm just searching through my change. But I'll tell you one point I'm at, which sounds a little sadder. And that's because I'm looking decades, generations out. And that is, I'm not just saving all my nickels. I am actually going to the bank and asking for them. Well, I haven't done it in a while, but I've asked for rolls of nickels. And here is why. Nickels are 75% copper. Now, I'm a chemist. I'm not a metallurgist. But I can't quite understand why nature does this trick to you once in a while. But 75% copper, 25% nickel. That's what's in a nickel. And I don't understand why, like brass or bronze or pewter, it does not retain part of the copperish orangish color, but it doesn't. And if you're a conspiracy theorist, you could be like, well, I didn't directly observe it with my own senses, so that must be false. So if you're one of those people who don't believe that a nickel's 75% copper because the government is lying to us, go get a gizmo called an X-ray fluorescence instrument and bounce X-rays off of it and tell us what's in a nickel. I'm pretty sure if the government was getting away with that sort of fakery, someone would have caught on. So let's just move forward with the assumption that a nickel is 75% copper. A nickel weighs 5 grams. 75% of that is 3.75 grams times $4.34, which, by the way, was yesterday's number, and it's higher today. 0.00826 pounds. Each nickel has 3.58 cents of copper in it. How about the rest? Well, the rest is nickel. Nickel, yesterday, traded at $7.73 a pound. During that whole Russia debacle thing, it went up to almost $20 a pound. So the nickel in a nickel is worth 2.13 cents. So 3.58 cents plus 2.13 cents. Each nickel is worth 5.71 cents if you factor in the metal that's in it. Now, I presented this as a video on YouTube, and I got a lot of, not hate, but a lot of skepticism, like,
Well, a nickel is just worth a nickel. A nickel's worth 5 cents.
yeah, you are correct. You could turn in your nickels, they'll give you 5 cents, which, by the way, is one reason I have a bunch of nickels, because if I needed some cash, I could take them to the bank and they'd give me 5 cents. I wouldn't lose all my money. I'm not going to go all anti-Bitcoin here, but you can lose a lot of money. I remember when crypto first came out, A guy who lives a few houses down, first thing he says, I made some money on those coins. A couple years go by. I didn't lose all that much money on those coins. Those things are volatile. And they don't have anything you can hold on to. Okay, end of crypto rant. I'm not buying Bitcoin, obviously. I'm buying coin. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hang on to my nickels. And I've even gone to the bank. And because I'm kind of ashamed of this, I'm kind of embarrassed, I go in there, hey, can I get some nickels? I told one branch that I was doing a statistics experiment where we weighed them. I don't know why I needed to lie. I could have just said I'm hoarding them, I told another branch I was putting a floor in. My brother gave me that idea. I was putting a floor in with nickels. I was going to do a table. But anyhow, 5.71 cents. But you can't sell them above face value until they change composition. Now here's the deal. If the metal within a 5-cent coin is worth 5.71 cents based on the trading value of copper and nickel, what do you think the cost to manufacture a nickel is? It's almost double. You know why? The U.S. Mint puts out a report every 2 years, and I read it. And there is mention in there of them someday changing composition. Let's look at our neighbors up north. Already, they use nickel-plated steel in their 5-cent coins. They don't even make 1-cent coins anymore. I don't think they even circulate them. They just round up your transaction to the nearest 5 cents. But nickel-plated steel. When are we going to go to that? Probably not that long from now. Well, it does happen to take an act of Congress. Have you been paying attention to what Congress is doing right now? Right now, they're currently busy impeaching each other. They take turns, like it's pickleball. Boop, we impeach them, they impeach us. We impeach them, they impeach us. They're volleying back and forth. So they're obviously, the fact that they're losing the hell out of a bunch of money minting nickels probably isn't really on their radar. And that's why my idea might suck if you're a short-term thinker or not a hugely long-term thinker. But here's the deal. You could say, well, why are you telling us you got a bunch of nickels? Well, if you want to steal them, you're going to have a hard time. Because if you do the math here, the amount of weight, $100 in nickels is about 10 kilos. Matter of fact, it's exactly 10 kilos. That's 22 pounds. So I remember seeing like one of the comments on my YouTube video that I did about this was like, well, you could keep, gold is way more portable than nickels because you could keep 10, I got to do that voice because that's how they always sound. That's how the people who troll YouTube comments all sound. They sound like this. Hey, you could keep $10,000 of gold in a grandma's purse. Okay. Yeah. Where's that grandma? And where's her purse? Someone's going to snatch that thing. You can't snatch $10,000 worth of nickels. Let's do that. Let's think about that. Actually, I don't even have my calculator with me, so I hope I do this right in my head. $10,000. That would be 100 times 10 kilos. $100 is 10 kilos. 1,000 would be 100 kilos. $10,000 worth of nickels would be 1,000 kilos. 2.2 thousand pounds. $10,000 of nickels is more than a ton. You're going to hurt your back and need to take numerous trips to the van. We're going to catch you on the Ring camera many times over. So, that's my long-term plan, is I don't have $10,000 worth of nickels. but I'd like to get to that point. Every time I get my change back, I get a little bit of chub when I have a pre-1982 penny or a nickel. And they go into a little container, and then they go into rollers, and this old man keeps them in boxes, and my kids will someday curse me. That's how it's going to go down. But, another thing, the people who poop on some of my stuff, sometimes I go on LinkedIn, and then they are very high with the praise over there. So maybe think about this like, what if I was a second or third level manager? What do you think about my idea now? If it was LinkedIn, oh, like I just got promoted from second level to third level manager.
Well deserved, sir.
That's LinkedIn right there, you bootlickers. It's like a sucker fish on the Montgomery Ward little aquarium there. Just that, those little things that stick to the side of the aquarium, just on management's ass. Sorry, that part was just for me. So young people, if you work for tips and you carry home jugs of them and you're cursing the wait and you got a little bit extra time on your hands, I'd sort the hell out of those pennies and put them aside, and I'd keep all your nickels. If you find yourself a pre-1964 dime or quarter, oh, you should get more than chub. That would be perfect, because now you're talking junk silver. I found one of those in my change once. It's in a little jar. I've only been hanging on to my change like this for a couple years. Oh, my kids worked for a ice cream establishment and brought home all these tips, and I didn't sort any of the stuff. We just went to the bank and turned them in. I would have paid them base value for those coins, and they would have been like, ooh, crisp dollar bills. So that's my thing. If you feel like economically things are going to get hard for you, I think you're right. I think thanks to my generation's short-term thinking, government debt, personal debt, it's going to be tough on you guys. So, if your new job or your current job or your first job is bringing you home a bunch of obnoxious coins, hang on to those things, especially if they're what I said, pre-1982 pennies or nickels. And you know what? Just a brief scan of eBay. You probably should have held on to your 1982 Montgomery Ward catalog, because those are going for $20 a pop. And those were free. And if you get one and you have it sent to you, there's going to be a little crease in that binding, and it's going to open right up to the ladies' underwear section. Oh la la. Thanks for listening.
Have a question for Mike? Email him at mikecanistero@icloud.com. Bye-bye.